In the early 1830s, the United States faced its first major confrontation between state and federal authority. A confrontation that tested the limits of the Constitution and revealed just how fragile the Union could be. It began not over slavery directly, but over tariffs, taxes on imported goods, and it unfolded in South Carolina, where economic frustration turned into political rebellion. This conflict became known as the Nullification Crisis, and it brought the nation one step closer to disunion. During the 1820s, the economies of the North and South had grown increasingly different. Northern industries demanded high tariffs to protect American-made goods from cheaper European imports. Southern planters, however, depended on exporting cotton and importing manufactured goods. High tariffs made these imports more expensive and reduced Britain's ability to buy Southern cotton. In 1828, Congress passed what Southerners called the Tariff of Abominations. It placed steep duties on imported goods, sparking outrage across the South, but nowhere more intensely than in South Carolina. Vice President John C. Calhoun, a South Carolinian and once a supporter of national unity, became the intellectual leader of Southern opposition. He argued that the federal government had overstepped its constitutional authority. Calhoun put forward a radical theory, the doctrine of nullification, which claimed that a state had the right to reject a federal law. He argued that any state could declare such a law null and void if it believed the law violated the Constitution. This idea struck at the very foundation of federal power. If one state could reject a national law, could others do the same? And if each state could decide which laws to obey, was the Union itself in danger? President Andrew Jackson, a Southerner himself and a staunch defender of the Union, saw nullification as a direct threat to national unity. Though he sympathized with Southern concerns, Jackson believed that disobeying federal law was tantamount to rebellion. The tension came to a head in 1832, when Congress passed a new, slightly lower tariff, but South Carolina declared that it was still unconstitutional. The state legislature adopted the Ordinance of Nullification, declaring both the tariffs of 1828 and 1832 void within South Carolina's borders. The state threatened to secede, to leave the Union if the federal government tried to enforce the laws. President Jackson responded with firmness. He issued a proclamation to the people of South Carolina denouncing nullification as treason. He made it clear that federal law was supreme and that he was prepared to use military force to ensure its enforcement. Jackson ordered the Army and Navy to prepare for action and called on Congress to support his efforts. Congress responded with the Force Bill, authorizing him to use troops against any state resisting federal authority. The nation stood on the brink of confrontation. Newspapers across the country debated whether civil war was imminent. But before violence could erupt, another familiar figure stepped in. The same man who had helped craft the Missouri Compromise a decade earlier, Henry Clay. Clay proposed a new compromise tariff that would gradually reduce duties over a period of years. Both sides, facing the possibility of war, accepted the plan. In early 1833, Congress passed the Compromise Tariff, and South Carolina repealed its Ordinance of Nullification, though as a symbolic gesture, it also nullified the Force Bill. The immediate crisis was over, the Union had survived, and no blood had been shed. But the deeper issues remained unresolved. The ideas born in the Nullification Crisis would resurface in the 1850s, this time over slavery, and would ultimately help lead the nation into civil war. In the next episode, we'll explore how this period gave rise to a new kind of moral and political movement, one that challenged slavery not with arms, but with words. This is the story of the abolitionist movement.